Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Damian Williams, and I'm the U.S. Attorney here in the Southern District of New York. 1 month ago, FTX, one of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchanges, collapsed, destroying billions of dollars in customer value overnight. And for every day of the past month, the dedicated prosecutors of this office and our partners at the FBI, SEC, and CFTC have been working around the clock to figure out what happened and to begin the process of seeking justice. This morning, we unsealed an 8-count indictment charging Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX's founder, with a series of interrelated fraud schemes that contributed to FTX's collapse. I authorized these charges last week, Wednesday. A grand jury here in Manhattan indicted Mr. Bankman-Fried last week, Friday. We obtained a warrant for his arrest, and that arrest was executed yesterday in the Bahamas. Now, let me be clear. My remarks today are going to be limited. That is by design. This investigation is very much ongoing, and it is moving very quickly. But I also want to be clear about something else. While this is our first public announcement, it will not be our last. The indictment has 8 counts, but effectively, it outlines 4 different areas of misconduct. First, we allege that Bankman-Fried defrauded customers at FTX.com, the cryptocurrency exchange that he founded. Second, we allege that he defrauded lenders to Alameda Research, his proprietary hedge fund. Third, we allege that he defrauded investors in FTX. And lastly, we allege that he violated campaign finance laws. Now, let me say a little bit more about what we allege in the indictment. First, we charge that from 2019 until earlier this year, Bankman-Fried and his co-conspirators stole billions of dollars from FTX customers. He used that money for his personal benefit, including to make personal investments and to cover expenses and debts of his hedge fund, Alameda Research. Secondly, and relatedly, we charge that Bankman-Fried lied to Alameda's lenders about the source of the money that he was using to pay those debts. Third, we charge that earlier this year, in the midst of the crypto crisis, Bankman-Fried lied to investors in FTX about the fact that he had sent billions of dollars in FTX customer money to Alameda. And fourth, we charge that Bankman-Fried violated federal campaign finance laws by causing tens of millions of dollars in illegal campaign contributions to be made to candidates and committees associated with both Democrats and Republicans. These contributions were disguised to look like they were coming from wealthy co-conspirators, when in fact, the contributions were funded by Alameda Research with stolen customer money. And all of this dirty money was used in service of Bankman-Fried's desire to buy bipartisan influence and impact the direction of public policy in Washington. To anyone who is watching this or hears about this prosecution, if you believe that you have been a victim of these schemes or you have information about the conduct that we've alleged in our indictment that we've unsealed today, please let us know. To any person, entity, or political campaign that has received stolen customer money, we ask that you work with us to return that money to the innocent victims. And to anyone who participated in wrongdoing at FTX or Alameda Research and who has not yet come forward, I would strongly encourage you to come see us before we come see you. Now, let me say a word about our partners at the FBI, the SEC, and the CFTC. The women and men of the FBI are some of the finest public servants in this country, and they have been with us since day one in this investigation, and there is no one better to work with. I want to thank the brilliant lawyers at the SEC and the CFTC. This investigation is complex and it's sprawling. We embrace that kind of challenge here in the Southern District of New York. And we always want the CFTC and the SEC by our side when we're doing that. And finally, I want to thank the career prosecutors from my office handling this case. Nicholas Rose and Danielle Sassoon, and their supervisors, Scott Hartman and Matthew Podolsky, the chiefs of our Securities and Commodities Fraud Task Force. I want to acknowledge the contributions and hard work of the prosecutors from our Money Laundering and Transnational Criminal Enterprises Unit, including Samuel Raymond and Thane Wren, and their chiefs, Jessica Feinstein and Tara Lamort. And I want to acknowledge the contributions from the chief of our Public Corruption Unit, Rebecca Donaleski. This should be very clear, but it's an all-hands-on-deck investigation here in SDNY, and I couldn't be prouder of the team that I'm privileged to lead. I now want to invite up to the podium FBI Assistant Director in Charge, Michael Driscoll.
Thank you, Damian. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon for this important announcement. This case came together at great speed, in such that it's only possible to be standing here today through tremendous coordination and cooperation from many people and agencies. As the indictment today alleges, Bankman-Fried knowingly defrauded customers of FTX through the misappropriation of customer deposits to pay expenses and debts of a different company. In addition, Bankman-Fried executed deliberate transactions designed to obscure and disguise the misuse of customer funds. He preyed on his customers, the victims of this case, abusing the trust placed not only in his company, but in himself as the lead of that company. We are determined to help the victims of this case get a sense of justice, and we will continue to make every attempt to recover as much of their funds as possible. If you're willing to deceive customers and attempt to hide your actions, we will be persistent in pursuing you and ensuring you are brought to justice. I want to thank Damian Williams and his team at the Southern District for their cooperation and partnership on this case. I also want to thank our partners at the SEC and the CFTC for their outstanding work. A word of thanks to DEA's Aviation Division, their Foreign Operations Group, for their logistics and resource assistance over the past few days. Our field offices in Boston, Miami, Washington, D.C., and our Legat office in Bridgetown. FBI headquarters components that fed and worked on this case, from Criminal Investigative Division, our CERG team, Crisis Incident Response Group, and our International Operations Division. And of course, the special agents and forensic accountants from our Securities Fraud Squad, as well as the Money Laundering Squad. The Justice Department Office of International Affairs has been an important partner in this. And of course, as Damian noted before, his team in Securities and Commodities Fraud, Money Laundering, and Transnational Criminal Enterprise Unit has been a true partner in this case. I also want to thank our international law enforcement partners. These kind of cases do not happen without that kind of coordination, and I specifically want to note the assistance provided by the Royal Bahamas Police Force. And I want to be clear, This case is about fraud. Fraud is fraud. It does not matter the complexity of the investment scheme. It does not matter the amount of money involved. If you mislead and deceive to take what does not belong to you, we will hold you accountable. And I'd like to thank everyone who's been working on this case for helping us adhere to that principle today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Grewal, the Director of the SEC's Division of Enforcement. Today, in a parallel civil complaint, the SEC filed charges against Sam Bankman-Fried, alleging that he orchestrated a years-long scheme to defraud equity investors in FTX Trading Limited, a company that he co-founded and led as CEO until its collapse last month. As alleged in our complaint, starting in 2019, and continuing through November 2022, Bankman-Fried raised more than $1.8 billion from equity investors on the basis of lies. You see, FTX operated behind a veneer of legitimacy that Bankman-Fried created by, among other things, repeatedly touting to investors FTX's top-notch automated risk controls that he claimed protected customer assets, and by repeatedly claiming that those assets were at all times safe, segregated, and secure. But as we allege in our complaint, that veneer wasn't just thin, it was also fraudulent. Because in reality, from FTX's inception in 2019, Bankman-Fried began secretly and improperly diverting FTX customer funds to his crypto hedge fund, Alameda Research. And as alleged in our complaint, he then misused those funds to make undisclosed venture investments, lavish real estate purchases, and large political donations. Bankman-Fried's claims about FTX's sophisticated risk controls and other customer protections were simply bogus. Similarly, his representations to FTX investors and trading customers concerning Alameda were also part of that carefully crafted veneer and were similarly false and misleading. He frequently claimed that Alameda was just another customer with no special privileges at FTX. But in truth, Bankman-Fried directed that Alameda be exempt from the very risk management measures that he touted to FTX investors and to its customers. He also provided Alameda a virtually unlimited line of credit funded by FTX customers. And he also diverted billions of dollars in customer funds from FTX to Alameda. Bankman-Fried's entire house of cards started to crumble as crypto asset prices plummeted in May of 2022, and as Alameda's lenders demanded repayment on billions of dollars in loans. But to continue propping up his empire, we allege that Bankman-Fried diverted billions more in FTX customer assets to Alameda, even as it was increasingly clear that Alameda and FTX could not make those customers whole. In fact, through the summer of 2022, he diverted hundreds of millions more in FTX customer funds to Alameda, which he then used for additional venture investments and for loans to himself and to other FTX executives. All the while, he continued to make misleading statements to investors about FTX's financial condition and about its risk management. And even in November 2022, faced with billions of dollars in customer withdrawal requests that FTX could not fulfill, Bankman-Fried misled investors from whom he sought still more money to plug the multi-billion-dollar holes that he had created. His brazen multi-year scheme finally came to an end when FTX, Alameda, and their tangled web of affiliates filed for bankruptcy on November 11, 2022. That collapse has had far-reaching consequences for FTX customers, for its investors, and for its counterparties. And our investigation into those consequences, into those individuals and entities involved, remains ongoing. But one immediate takeaway from today's announcement should be that non-compliant trading platforms pose dramatic risks to both their investors and to their customers. Among other things, they don't provide them with the same robust level of disclosures and protections against fraud and conflicts of interest. That's what traditional U.S. registered securities exchanges provide. So it's imperative that non-compliant platforms come into compliance. But as Chair Gensler has made clear, the runway is getting shorter for them to come in and to register with us. And for those who do not, the Enforcement Division stands ready to take action. I'd like to recognize the incredible team from our Crypto Assets and Cyber Unit and from across our division responsible for today's action. Devlin Sue, Ivan Snyder, David Brown, Brian Huckrow, Pasha Salimi investigated this matter under the supervision of Amy Hartman, Michael Brennan, Jorge Tenrero, and David Hirsch. Amy Burkhart and David DeAudio will lead the litigation against Bankman-Fried under the supervision of LaDan Stewart and Olivia Che. Finally, I want to commend our partners here at the Southern District of New York under the leadership of U.S. Attorney Damian Williams and our partners at the FBI and the CFTC. This is yet another strong example of the collaboration that you see before you this afternoon. With that, I'll turn it back to U.S. Attorney Williams. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome up Gretchen Lowe from the CFTC.
Good afternoon. I'm Acting Director Gretchen Lowe, Acting Director of the Division of Enforcement at the CFTC, Gretchen Lowe. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. Today, the CFTC filed a complaint against Sam Bankman-Fried and his companies, FTX and Alameda, charging a fraudulent scheme that dates back to the launch of FTX.com exchange in May 2019. The CFTC's complaint specifically charges defendants with fraud by misappropriation of customer funds, as well as false statements to the public, customers, investors, and Congress about the handling and security of those funds. As alleged, there are over $8 billion in customer losses that we've ascertained as of today. The rippling consequences of defendants' fraud are vast and have done significant damage to the integrity of the evolving digital asset market. The CFTC charges that at Bankman-Fried's direction, FTX customer deposits intended to be used to trade digital asset commodity futures, swaps, and other products were not appropriately segregated by FTX. Instead, customer funds were held in Alameda accounts where they were commingled and misappropriated for a variety of unauthorized purposes, such as use in high-risk investments in other digital asset enterprises, political contributions, and to purchase luxury real estate. As charged, the fraudulent use of customer funds by Bankman-Fried and his companies were inconsistent with the touted FTX terms of service and contrary to numerous public statements made by Bankman-Fried. The CFTC also charges that defendants created features in the underlying code for FTX that allowed Alameda to have essentially an unlimited line of credit on the exchange. Defendants also provided Alameda with unfair trading advantages, including quicker execution times and an exemption from FTX's auto-liquidation risk management process. This massive and costly fraud was in the connection with commodities interstate commerce, and as alleged, including Bitcoin, Ether, and Tether, which are the most widely traded digital assets in the world. Bitcoin and Ether also underlie derivatives contracts on CFTC-designated exchanges. Lastly, standing here today with the U.S. Attorney's Office at the Southern District, FBI, and the SEC represents yet another stellar example of the importance of federal regulators and federal criminal authorities working collaboratively and effectively with each other to achieve justice. The teams worked quickly and tirelessly to obtain compelling evidence and to begin to hold those responsible for the FTX collapse accountable, all within a very short time frame. Thank you to all at the SDNY, FBI, and SEC for your cooperation. And thank you to the CFTC team, Nina Rubinsky, Carlin Metzger, Brian Sue, Ben Jackman, Yusuf Japar, supervised by Deputy Director Robert Howell and Chief Trial Elizabeth Pendleton, and many, many others at the Commission who supported the work. I am proud of your hard work, your dedication to the mission of the Commission, and for always acting in the public interest. Thank you.
All right, happy to take some questions.
You're going to pursue charges against his parents, number one, What is the situation with extradition? And finally, he didn't fit the profile of someone who you would think would be behind this. I don't know what the profile is typically, but he wore shorts and a T-shirt. He was incredibly bright. Can you address the fact that he didn't fit the profile and that's part of the way he was able to fool so many people?
Well, you can commit fraud in shorts and T-shirts in the sun. I mean, that's possible too. So I think that addresses the last question. In terms of whether we're going to bring charges against anyone else, look, I can only say it this clearly, but we are not done.
And extradition?
Extradition is ongoing in the Bahamas. I don't have anything to add on that. Next question. Okay, so on the timing of the arrest, as I mentioned before, I authorized charges last week Wednesday, and he was indicted as a defendant in this district as of last week Friday, and we had a warrant for his arrest. And so the timing was dictated by law enforcement as opposed to any other considerations, including the timing of his testimony in Congress. He was wanted for arrest, and we acted on that. In terms of the speed of the investigation, you're right, this is very, very fast, but I've also underscored that we're not done. But we have a track record here. I think you've seen us, this group in particular, at this podium multiple times since I've been U.S. Attorney, announcing charges in this space with a lot of speed. I think that's a result of the collaboration and the hard work and the determination to make sure that we are acting as soon as possible and no sooner. Next question. Look, I think today's announcement is about one person and his conduct. It is fair to say that this office and our partners who are standing with us today are very, very active in this space. I can't say anything more than that. Next question. So if you're asking about who is cooperating, who is not cooperating with our investigation, I'm not at liberty to say who has come in. I will reiterate the call that I made before, that if you have not reached out to us to talk to us, I would encourage you strongly to do so, and do so quickly. Next question.
Just to follow up on that, you had said that for anyone that actually has not come forward, so far satisfied that there are some who can, and then again, just I think in all of the charges filed today, the reference that things have been ongoing, potentially since FTX was founded. Is there any sense that something could have been done quicker so that
Look, I'll take the last question first. I mean, I don't think it's fair for me to speculate as to what could have been done differently by whom and when to prevent something like this from happening. I mean, we've alleged willful misconduct and fraud. And so ultimately, from where I sit, given my role, I view the fault as being with the people who we have alleged, either in the indictment or references CCs, co-conspirators, as being the people who are responsible for this happening. Can you repeat the first question again?
Yeah, you said that anyone at FTX who has not come forward, you encourage them to specify that. Does that mean that some have?
I'm not going to expand beyond what I said previously. Next question.
On the campaign finance side, do you think that any of the elected officials or candidates were aware that these were improper contributions? As we said just now in the House Financial Services hearing, that pending legislation may have been impacted by this flow of funds. Do you have any comments on that? And on possibly seeking remand, if and when ready comes, do you intend to stay this question?
Okay, so that's a lot of questions. Look, I'm not going to get ahead of ourselves in terms of what we may or may not seek when he is here. He's currently in the Bahamas, and I'm not going to interfere with that process by making a comment at this point in time. In terms of the contributions that we've discussed today and in the indictment, I'm not going to be able to expand upon who knew what. We have alleged what we have alleged, and if we have more to add at any point, we will do so then.
Comparable to any other previous financial fraud? Is it one of the biggest ever? Is there any way to categorize?
It's so hard to compare these things, but I think it's fair to say that by anyone's lights, this is one of the biggest financial frauds in American history. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.